Warm welcome to all the attendees and our panelists on the Responsible and Sustainable Innovation webinar. My name is Bhaskar, and I will be your moderator and host for this session. I, as this topic is very important when we talk about responsible and sustainable innovation, and innovation is also one of our strategic imperative from NASSCOM standpoint. Uh, Similarly, I'm very happy to introduce you to my panelists for today's session. They come from a different sector and diverse background. Let me introduce you to my eminent panelists. To start with, I have Lene Heiling Axelson, Corporate Vice President, Novo Nordisk, K. Nageshwar Rao, Vice President, APAC Engineering Products and Platform Unisys, Shubhrajit Dey, Technology Leader, Energy and Carbon Management Shell, Mahesh Prabhu, Vice President, Global Head of Innovation, ITC Infotech. A very warm welcome to all my eminent panelists. So before I deep dive into this topic, and we all know the importance of this topic for definitely from the innovation standpoint and from the environmental standpoint. So to start with Lene first, what do you think? And if I talk about Novo Nordisk, how you think Novo Nordisk is creating that sustainable innovation capabilities and seeding them in the culture? And just to give you an example, I was just going through one of the article very recently, wherein DIGO, they come with a very fantastic innovative idea wherein they are going to have a Johnny Walker whiskey to be sold in a paper bottle than the glass bottle. So that's creating a bigger impact. So if you can talk about from the Novo perspective.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Well, I mean, Novo Nordisk is a pharmaceutical company, and we've been in the industry for nearly 100 years. And, we feel that being amongst the top 10 pharma companies when we measure on market cap in the world, it comes with a responsibility. It comes with the responsibility of all the time being able to come up with innovative medicines. And today, I mean, our competitors in the industry are, of course, very, very good. So in order to come up with innovative medicines, you need to be innovative in all the processes you have in the company. So we have throughout now several years been talking innovation, been talking about being agile, being talking about also making our processes more simple. And I think actually we see now with COVID coming in that suddenly we've had another push forward in terms of trying out things, and sometimes we fail and then we learn from it, and other times we really see we're pushing forward in a very innovative manner.
Yep, very well said. So now we'll move to, because healthcare is one of the important in these crisis situations. So we know the importance, and also, Kena, from your perspective, when we talk about UNICEF, so what do you think, how is being seeded in the culture? Because that's also one of the place we don't want this thing to be only among few set of people.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me, Bhaskar. So when you look at how do we see this in the culture of the organization, I think this responsible and sustainable innovation that we are talking about is mostly a matter of mindset and focus. So while the specific ideas that need to come out have to be in a certain context, that context needs to be clear among the entire organization. So normally when we talk of innovation frameworks, I think almost all companies today have very robust frameworks based on which they are able to generate innovation. But in this context of responsible and sustainable innovation, I think we need to look at what are the parameters that define sustainable innovation. One, of course, is the long-term validity of the idea. Of course, it has to be aligned with the business model. So these are some of the parameters which need to be kind of built into the culture, built into the organization DNA. And so I believe it's a matter of focus, mindset, and constant communication from leadership. and then making sure that in the existing framework, the underlying theme or the DNA is all about responsibility and sustainability of the innovation idea. In Unisys, if you look at it, we do it in multiple ways. One is, of course, like I said, tuning our innovation campaigns or hackfests towards this concept. Recently, we ran a campaign called Embracing the New Normal, where we just opened it up. And the other aspect is it doesn't have to be constrained to a certain group. Like this particular innovation campaign, we did not restrict it only to the R&D groups. Like it was open to the entire company, and people could come up and share their ideas or put in their ideas about sustainable innovation ideas. Right? Now, the other way we do it is also through open innovation. Like ideas can come from anywhere, and we embrace that concept very strongly. So you have heard of Cloud 2020 and various other academic initiatives that we have. So these are some of the ways. Like one is, of course, making sure that the theme is understood and it becomes part of the culture and DNA. And two is tuning your existing frameworks and ecosystem to align to these parameters.
Sure. So definitely we will deep dive into some of the things which you touched upon.
Sure.
So Mahesh, I will come to you now from the IDC Infotech side. How you feel responsible and sustainable innovation is part of your organization and creating that culture.
Yeah, thank you, Bhaskar. Very happy to be part of this panel. See, ITC Infotech is a global IT services company, and we provide business-friendly solutions for organizations across industries like manufacturing, CPG, retail, banking, financial services, travel, and hospitality. At ITC Infotech, we have four main pillars of innovation. The first one is what we call Interruption Lab, where we do R&D on emerging technologies. The whole idea is to see how we can help our customers adopt new technologies faster. The second pillar is crowdsourcing of ideas. We have a large talent pool, and we want to leverage everyone. Like KNR was mentioning, ideas can come from anywhere. So we have a stage-gated idea management platform through which we seek ideas. The third one is ecosystem of startups. We do understand in this age, one company cannot do everything themselves. So we have to have an ecosystem, and especially I would say a tech ecosystem, which will help you in finding innovative and emerging technology solutions. And last pillar is our annual tech event. We call it iTech, where we conduct hackathons, tech showcase. We basically bring together academia, the startups, tech enthusiasts, and our global customers. So together we can find innovative solutions to complex business problems. So that's our primary approach. Being part of the ITC group, we have inherited sustainable innovation in our DNA, because ITC is an exemplar in the triple bottom line philosophy. So not only financial metrics are important, but also social and environmental, ecological factors do matter in whatever we do. So if you look at the group level, ITC group has been carbon positive, water positive, and solid waste recycling positive for many, many years now. And we also do the GRI reporting. So if you give more or less equal importance to all three dimensions, the financial, social, and environmental aspects for any new initiative, then I believe the social and sustainable and responsible innovation will happen naturally.
Sure. Very well said. And now I'll move to Shubhajit, and I took a conscious decision before coming to Shubhajit, because when I have seen the way your designation has been positioned, it's called energy and carbon management in Shell. So that's why I thought, okay, because it's part of your designation. So how, and Shell has, obviously it's a energy organization. So obviously responsible and sustainable innovation is one of the key pillar. So how you have seen Shell, or how you are seeing Shell moving towards the sustainable innovation, and how you are seeding this in your culture?
Yes, Bhaskar, thank you very much for having me in this panel. I would potentially agree with what the other panelists have said about mindset, about ecosystem, but let's step back for a moment and let's try to address this as to why would this innovation culture be required across the energy and carbon management space, right? When we think of the energy and carbon management space, we are talking of significant societal and consumer tectonics. I'm sure you all will agree with me. Now, what this implies is a recognition that there will be cultural, there will be technological, and then the business transformations. So fundamentally, the way we would want to think about this is in an ability to embrace, if you will, the continual learning and development, but with a purpose. So let me try to break up my response to you in maybe 4 or 5 different themes, and I'll keep them brief. One is, let's think of the purpose of Shell. Our purpose is to power progress together with more and cleaner energy solutions. Now, this purpose has been quite a cementing effect across the enterprise, and we are all working together and innovating together towards a low carbon or zero emissions future, if you will. So that's one piece. The purpose has brought us together. The second piece would be embracing digital technology and AI. And as you all would know, that digital technologies and AI are becoming very core to our businesses. And we tend to run these not only for our businesses, but as a change program. We have a program called as Shell.ai. And we right now, as I speak with you, have more than 4,000 people who are part of Shell.ai network. And this involves scientists, engineers, developers, operators, etc. And Shell.ai is also an ability for us to bring together leadership commitment to allow people to reskill. And that takes me to my third point that I was trying to share with you, which is another piece of this transformative culture is also about repurposing the existing skills. So let me give you an example. So for example, systems engineering is something that we have been doing for a long, long time, and we are very good at it. We have used it for our global asset operations and project developments. Now we are trying to take that ability and see how it can be leveraged for future innovation. For example, how would an electrolyzer plant fit with a GTL plant, right? And so you are not necessarily innovating something very disruptive, but you are taking very fruitful and successful proof points and bringing them together. And in the process, you are repurposing existing skills. I would also want to highlight the point that has already been made by Mahesh, but allow me to repeat that, which is, if you think of the scale and the rate of change we are talking of in the energy and the carbon space, it is a no-brainer, Bhaskar, that it would require unprecedented scales of collaboration. It would require unprecedented scales of collaboration and identification of new models. And this cannot be restricted to only academia and startup collaborations, but also customer partnerships, supplier partnerships, and which eventually means I'm trying to nudge this conversation towards cross-industry collaborations, if you will. And let me just end with another point. We had alluded to this a little bit earlier, which is natural teams, right? So it is important to also identify that it is about time for us to cut across disciplines and conventional verticals and see if we can operate in natural team setting. So in a nutshell, it's a transformation that we are going through. It's very early days, but we are absolutely on the journey.
Thanks, Shubhajit. I was facing some issue with the. Okay, so Shubhajit, I will pick up the thread from where you're talking about the disruption, and I will take from the disruption. The moment you talk about the innovation, the first thing comes in your mind is disruption, and second, the next thing after the disruption is how it's going to be adopted in the organization. So anyone would like to share their experience, because when you talk about innovation, and I can see Lene, you raised your hand. So question to you, when you talk about the changes and the change management, how that disruption you have seen and the adoption in the organization with your experience?
So the way we viewed on it is well, we need everybody to try out this innovation, and it's very difficult or different how you innovate if you are in R&D compared to if you are in marketing. So the way our executive management have decided several years ago to go ahead is to let it mushroom in the organization. So everybody has been talking innovation, have been trying out to do RPA, have tried to do various kinds of analytics, and now are trying to do various kinds of artificial intelligence. And this mushrooming has created, of course, a buzz around the organization. And eventually, after 2-3 years of mushrooming, they decided then to do some more central initiatives, but still with some mushrooming going on. But the central initiatives has a bit more of a muscle, a bit more of IT skills, etc. And they are trying to coordinate without taking the innovation mindset away from around the organization. And we are even now here in our shared services in India seeing, hey, we want to innovate as well, even though we're working with a lot of the more mature processes, mature systems. We've seen that, of course, we should innovate as well. So we want to do an innovation hub here as well, where we try to work with startups and try to look at some of the more tedious processes and by actually trying to innovate them, we want to show that we can be a capability center as well. And then step by step, we might even say, hey, we are the capability centers of all RPA because we're actually living in Bangalore. That's one of the really high-tech cities of the world with a lot of innovation and a lot of startup capabilities. So that's been our learning. I'm not saying that's the perfect model, because what you often see is that innovation is then similar innovation is happening in different parts of the organization, and they tend to even compete instead of collaborate. So that's of course what you want to avoid, and that's why we start making these competency centers now to say we should actually collaborate because we are in it together in the company, so we shouldn't compete.
No, I completely agree. And that's exactly the point in terms of the collaboration with the parent headquarter and the shared services, or a GCC as we talk. So I completely agree with you. Any other thoughts from any of the panelists? Kenna, please go ahead.
Yeah, Bhaskar. So just like what Lene was saying, I think the disruption happens automatically. I mean, if you have an ecosystem which allows ideas to mushroom without having to coerce people, which is what I think we have achieved in Genesis through the framework that I was talking about. I mean, there is an opportunity for anyone to submit their ideas. You don't need to have to go through a very laborious process of, you have an idea, it's out there, right? It's available for the SMEs to filter to process. So there is no restriction on who can submit an idea. There is, irrespective of which part of the organization you are from, you have access to the idea portal, and ideas are, of course, they are kind of channelized depending on which domain or which vertical they belong to. And then the SMEs across from around the company go look at those ideas and then decide how much business affinity is there, how much of this idea is really worth pursuing. Then there is a very well-rounded process where the idea generation to taking it to the next level and moving it to a business proposition and converting it into a MVP or a POC or whatever. So there is a very well laid out process. The point I'm trying to make is, when you have such a system where access is available to everybody, all you need to do is light that match and disruption happens. Like, for example, I just talked about the new normal campaign that we ran across the company. The number of ideas that poured in was amazing, right? So I think if you have that culture and the systems to enable that culture, disruption happens.
Sure. Any other thoughts from you, Shubhrajit or Mahesh? You want to add something?
I wanted to just very briefly add one more point. I think Lena has alluded to it, but I really caught onto that point. I think it's important to recognize that when we talk of innovation, the mind automatically hones in on technology innovation. Yes, absolutely. But we are at a juncture in time across all sectors. I think we need to recognize that the innovation is required in technology, it's required in business models, it's required in commercial constructs, even partnership models. I'm not even trying to get into regulatory policies and all of that, but every dimension, if you will, Bhaskar, is crying out for some innovation.
Yeah,
Sure.
Just adding on to that, I think innovation is all about converting an idea into value. And when we talk of value, everybody understands, okay, what am I spending? What am I getting? So the financial aspect of it. So to make it more sustainable and make it more responsible, I think we should, like I said, we should add the other two dimensions and make it part of our scorecard. For example, how does it score on a social impact? Is there any social impact on this? What does it do to your environment? So if the scorecard is balanced out among all the three aspects, then the innovation is more sustainable and responsible.
Yep, I completely agree on that. So I will move on to the next question, which I have in my mind about, and I will start with KNR, you first. We are talking about responsible and sustainable innovation or innovation as a whole. Why you think this is so important and this is the key element?
So, Bhaskar, if you observe, a trend has emerged in the last couple of decades where, starting maybe mid 2010, investors, both institutional and retail, have started focusing on the ESG data of companies. Right? ESG is your environmental, social, and governance related data. So there is an established correlation between ESG ratings and financial results. And like I said, investors have really started looking at, are these parameters, one, they are at the right levels, they are high in these companies, and two, are they for the long term? It's not a flash in the pan kind of stuff, right? So it is also proved that companies that are managed for the long term with ESG parameters in mind are more resilient in times of unexpected shocks like this, right? What we are going through right now. So that long-term focus and ESG focus are important from a success of the company point of view. Now, I think that relates also to the innovation part, right? When you innovate, if you are focusing on the long-term aspect and the ESG aspects, it's going to really help the companies succeed further. That's where I think responsible and sustainable innovation is very important, both from a company point of view and also as human beings, whether we are part of the corporate or outside the corporate, we have a human responsibility for the environment, for the society, for the communities. Right? So from that point of view, I think responsible and sustainable innovation is absolutely.
Sure.
Often companies view it as two distinct aspects. I have a social responsibility as one aspect, and then I have a business as another aspect. But then either one of them is not sustainable. So you cannot sustain only the social initiative. You cannot sustain only your business if you're completely ignoring the social aspect. So the right balance, like I said, if you are able to get the right balance among environmental, social, and financial, then that naturally becomes sustainable. So you're able to invest more into it because you're also able to make money. And also it is making a good impact on the environment and the society in large. So you get a favorable environment from the favorable policies from the government, right? So everything will start flowing in naturally.
No, I completely agree because this needs to go in hand. You cannot make it two separate entity and then work towards it. I agree. Now I will take one question which I can see in the chat window, maybe a little tougher one. I don't want who wants to go first. It says, what are the top 2 learnings they have in their journey towards sustainable innovation? So it's more towards your personal experience. And I don't know whether you want to share top 2 learnings or anything if you want to highlight. I leave the floor open. I don't want to direct it to anyone. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I can give an
Okay, I'll start then. But I personally, I think there are 2 learnings, which is I talked about the failure part before. And in Novo Nordisk, we used to have what we call the watermelon culture, where we had a lot of KPIs in our balanced scorecard. And at the end of the year, they were always green. And people said, well, it's fine, it's green, you know, on the outside, but inside, I mean, it's just because we made the wrong KPIs, because it's actually red. So it has been changed. Our balanced scorecard was sort of taken away. The very long, tedious balanced scorecard is away. Now it's sort of a one-page strategy to action. We have still with some KPIs, but with a lot more focus on, well, it's actually allowed to fail. And you're supposed to be much more ambitious. So you're supposed to set out targets that you might not reach, but where you really show you're ambitious. And the failure part is a cultural element as well, because none of us really like to fail. And none of us for sure like to say, hey, I made a failure. So that we've had to create, and I'm not saying we are perfect yet, because there's still some tendency to the watermelon culture. But I think that part is for sure one thing. The other part is very much that we have to realize we can't do it all by ourselves. As I said, we have 100 years of history of developing innovative drugs to meet our purpose of defeating diabetes. We are within diabetes as one of our core areas. Now, that we've done very much on our own in the past, but we have to realize we have to now collaborate much more with partners. And that could be partners within the R&D field, but it could also be our suppliers. So earlier this year, we actually announced that when it comes to both innovation, but especially also to looking at being much more focused on environment, so environmentally friendly and CO2 neutral, we want our suppliers to be that as well. And before 2030, we want all suppliers delivering to Novo Nordisk to be green. So that's about setting ambitious targets. Do we know how to do it? For sure, no, we don't know that right now, but we do have some years to come after it.
But I really like the example that you have given, KPI with the watermelon. It's completely green from outside, but it's red from inside. So it's fantastic. And even I was going through one of the interviews where I've also heard the moment when we talk about innovation, the moment you will be fail faster, the probability of getting success is also faster. So any thoughts from Kena, Shubhrajit, Mahesh on your top 2 learnings?
Yeah. So what we have generally seen is when customer talk about a innovative project or a new idea, they want to be the first to try that out. Okay, and very clearly we have seen, and especially more so in the Indian context. So we want to try it out first. That ambition is already always there most of the time. But at the same time, they also come back and ask, where have you implemented this before? Right, that is kind of contradictory, and you cannot have both. So if you want to be the first, you know that, okay, you have not implemented this before. Second one, like Lene was talking about, I think the fear of failure. So when someone asks for a new initiative, they kind of nudge you and say, okay, guarantee the success to me. So again, that is again a difficult thing. So you will not be able to try out new things if you fear failure. What we should understand is on the path of the success, there are multiple failures and multiple smaller failures. It is okay to fail. As long as you're headed in the right direction, you will see success one day.
Shubhajit, please go ahead.
Yeah, let me just add on to this. I mean, of course, I agree with what Lena and Mahesh shared on brilliant blunders, which is necessary. But maybe a slightly different dimension. One of the learnings I can clearly reflect on is as you think of this sustainable innovation, and I'm obviously going down the route of a broad energy and carbon management space, is the need to come up with new metrics. There needs to be new metrics for investment, whether it's in your R&D or a new business model or whatever. There needs to be a new standardized metric also discovered for measuring and tracking of your parameters. You know, and when you talk of carbon intensity and energy intensity, if you talk to 3 people, I'm pretty sure you'll get 3 beautifully different answers, right? So that's one learning, need for new metrics. The second learning I would reflect on in this space of sustainable innovation is a lot of this is dependent on the rate of technology innovation or disruptive technology development, plus how it gets married to climate policy action. So how you integrate climate policy action and leverage that for deployment of disruptive technology at scale is non-trivial. That's another learning. Let me leave it there.
So Bhaskar, in my case, I think there are a couple of things I can think of. One is, as I said in the beginning, I think we are still at a stage where the concept of responsible or sustainable innovation is not completely obvious. Right? So I think there is still a lot of, evangelization or communication about what really it means. Like, for example, when I said, when you have to select these ideas for sustainable innovation, what are the things you look at? The ESG factors or the long-term factors and those kind of stuff, right? So if people need to start innovating and coming up with new ideas in this space, first of all, they need to know what it means, right? It may be very obvious in certain domains like pharma or energy. In a technology domain, what do you define as a sustainable innovation, right? I think that is one of the learnings, to make it more consistently understood, more broadly understood, the concept, and guiding efforts towards generating that kind of ideas. That's one. Second one, of course, is in this particular space, I believe it doesn't have to be compartmentalized. You don't need to go to one particular group and say generate sustainable innovation. I think as long as you open up the boundaries and get people to talk to each other, the probability and the propensity of generating more sustainable innovation is high. These are some of the things that I think are learnings from this.
Very well said, Kainer. So I will try to club one of my question with one of the questions from the attendees. So one thing which I have in mind, we talk about responsible and sustainable innovation. Is there any framework in place? Maybe obviously it's going to be different from the domain and from the industry wise. And also one question which is coming from the people, those who are attending, on the scale and innovation is in sustainability. So whether framework and scalability, these are the two things, if you guys can talk about from your organization and your sector perspective. Let's go with Shubhrajit first then.
Yeah, let me pick the scalability piece, right? So any innovation, and this is, I picked scalability because it's very much in line with the last thought that I left you with, that how does climate policy action and disruptive technology deployment come in together, right? So when we talk of disruptive technology innovation deployment, we are taking leap of faith on quite a few things. We are taking a leap of faith in deployment. We are taking a leap of faith in disruptive, right? Whatever those mean. So the usual practice obviously would be what has been tried and tested, which is, you first try out minimum viable products, you try out different avatars of those, then do demo stuff, and then go for commercial deployment. There's no doubt in that. But what's possibly changing in this game is, one, a recognition of the scale and rate at which these changes need to happen. Second, how can you leverage new technologies? Digital technologies, right? We have not yet gotten to that topic today as yet, but some of the present crisis is also accelerating adoption of those digital technologies. Now, if that's adopted in our ways of working, of course it is getting embedded in technology innovation, and that's affecting the rate at which development happens. Yeah, so let me summarize with these 2 points. One is digital technology, and the other one is what I just said sometime.
Sure. Any other thoughts from Lene, from you on the framework and scalability?
So on the framework, well, I don't know if there's any particular framework being used, but I think Subhajit also talked about this triple bottom line. And I mean, we were amongst the inventors of the triple bottom line many years ago, and we've had a sustainability report as part of our annual report for actually quite a number of years. So in everything we do, we actually do think in this triangle. So when we start innovating, it's part of the whole setup to ask ourselves, is this actually sustainable? Does it do something good to society? Is it something that we need others to help us to develop? And also, secondly, is it actually doing good to the environment? And for the environmental part, we launched I think 2 years ago, a new environmental strategy called Circular to Zero. So we wanted not only to have a zero impact on the world or on the earth, but we also wanted it to be sustainable and circular. So we kept reusing things. And for those of you who knows pharma industry and knows how, I mean, it takes us 15 years to develop a new product before it's in the market. And also we use a lot of chemicals. I mean, that's not easy. And that it's back to reaching out to suppliers and trying to develop, more environmental friendly concepts. Is there then some frameworks? Well, if you talk about the environment, there are a number of frameworks developed together with NGOs, etc., where you say you need to follow these in order to see yourself as environmentally friendly. But we haven't found out a very sort of easy to use framework where you include all of them except from our triple bottom line. That one we revisit all the time and believe is a very strong concept.
Sure.
When I talk about frameworks, I think I said this before, but I don't think we really need a totally new framework, because most of the innovation frameworks that various companies have are robust. And from a sustainability point of view, I think one or two things that we should introduce into the framework in some form are the ESG factors and the long-term versus short-term considerations. And of course, in the current situation, we can also look at whether some idea or idea that's coming up is applicable anyway, or it's applicable in the new normal, right? So these could be the elements that can be introduced in the framework to focus on sustainable innovations.
Ish, you want to add something?
Yeah. So I'll probably take the scale question. So I think a very good example of innovation at scale is ITC's eChopal program. So which was initially launched in the year 2000, and ITC Infotech has been a technology partner in this wonderful journey with ITC. So this is a largest internet-based rural intervention covering more than 40,000 villages and 4 million farmers. What it essentially aims to do is help farmers make informed decisions, like when to harvest, where to sell, where can they get best returns for whatever hard work they have done, and generally improve their livelihoods. So this is the broad contours of the program. I'll not get into too many details because that will be one webinar by itself. So it's been a very successful innovation, and also Harvard and Michigan Business School case studies. It's being taught in most of the management schools nowadays. So we are working on the 4th generation of eChopal right now. We call it digital farmer platform. So what was initially conceptualized like Chopals, physical networks created in village hubs. Now we are giving that empowerment to the farmer in their hands through the mobile. So giving them advice, doing crop monitoring, advisory on inputs, input procurements, also building some seed bank and other kind of farmer communities, and so on and so forth. So this is a innovation at scale, and it has been sustained through many years. Like I said, the first version or the first generation of it was launched in the year 2000, and even 20 years later, we are now in the 4th generation of eChopal, but we continue to innovate, and the innovation is sustainable because there is value being created, and the value is again able to fund itself, right? That's one example I could think of. When we talk about frameworks or measurements, it's very, very easy to measure the financial ones, but also I would say from taking some examples of what we did in eChopal. So it is possible to define certain quantitative targets even for the impact that your innovation has on society. For instance, you can say your target is to increase farmers' income. So you can certainly say target, what is your target year on year and what is the actual? So you can certainly measure it. So, or you want to say increase in rural consumption. What is the target you have, right? Or what is the motivation for a farmer to grow better grades and better quality, right? So what was the total produce last year and has the grades improved? So there are ways to measure it. Environmental may be slightly more difficult than societal impact, but that also there are ways to define and measure. For example, let's say you talk about paper. Generally, it is assumed that paper is bad for the environment, right? Don't print paper unless it is necessary. But when you set yourself goals like for every tree you cut, you're not only seeding but also fully growing 4 additional trees or 10 additional trees, and net impact is always positive. So there is more number of trees of the same size than what you have cut. So if you define the metrics right, and if you have a way to measure it, then I think you can certainly have a framework, but you will not have the same set of parameters work for every project. You have to define it specifically for each new initiative.
Lene, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, it was just a question to KNR, because I actually liked what he said, and I think actually also what Maresh said. But it brings us back to long and short and long term benefits, and in my world, I mean, it's still a pretty normal business case you need to make. And then when you have your standard business case, you can always add, well, how do you then ensure it's environmentally friendly and it's also sustainable, and you put some measures in as well. So it ends up being pretty standard, but still a very strong tool.
That's true. I mean, I think in terms of how do you ensure that when there are immediate needs, how do you ensure that we also focus on long term? I think from a sustainability point of view, that is important. And from that point of, for example, let's take the current situation, right? Are there innovations to support for example, the remote working situation that all of us are in, right? There are huge number of possibilities in this space, right? If we look at what has happened, what changes have happened, what are the permanent shifts that people are going to go through, there is huge number of opportunities that we can come up with in this space. For example, I mean, it may sound very crazy. All of us have at least 2, if not more, network connections at our homes. In this situation, would it not be great if we can club all of those and make it a huge pipe of bandwidth for us, right? So from a technology point of view, I can say that, but I am sure in every domain, every part of every walk of life, there are opportunities in the new normal that people can think about. And those, by definition, I think, since they are going to change the paradigm of how we are going to live and conduct ourselves in the future, are going to be long term. So that I think is the benchmark I would use for kind of coming up with and evaluating ideas for the long term and sustainability.
Sure. I have a very tricky question in the chat window, and I will try to make it more tricky. And if you guys can answer from your organization and your sector perspective, that would be more interesting. So the question what I can read here is, hypothetically, if the word innovation pauses now, I know it's going to be very difficult for Lene for sure. What's the downside, especially in post-COVID era?
I can go first. It will be a disaster. So, I mean, there is no doubt. I mean, but why only one sector? Any sector for that matter, I think we thrive on innovation. Yeah. So if it pauses now, especially in this situation, I think it's going to be a disaster, because this is the situation where this is the time where we need newer solutions, newer ideas to come up, irrespective of which domain, which space we are talking about. So.
You can go next.
I would say if the word innovation is not there, then you may call it something else, but we'll still be innovating.
Yeah, I can quickly comment on that as well. First of all, recognizing that COVID is obviously an enormous humanitarian tragedy, but it also is starting to have a lot of societal and economic implications, right? So innovation will hopefully help all of these changes to come in, whether it's climate change, whether it is economic recovery at whatever pace it happens or not. Let me just end my comment on this question on a slightly positive or optimistic note. Innovation probably is such a thing, it'll never stop. Starting from the moment fire was innovated, I don't think human civilization has ever stopped innovating. Whether we classify, qualify it under certain metrics or framework is a different debate, but innovation is very human.
Yep. Yeah, and even I agree with what Mahesh also said, whether we call it innovation or not, something else, but definitely we'll keep on innovating. Mahesh, you want to add something? No?
No, I think that's the simple point I wanted to make.
Sure.
So we've been even in the industry also, we've been calling different terms. So we say sometimes we are fascinated with the term disruption or disruptive innovation, and then innovation, then digital transformation and whatnot. But end of it, all you're doing is actually trying to find newer ways of solving a problem or newer ways of creating value. So that I think will be the essence, and it'll always remain.
Sure. Lene?
Yeah, I mean, I would personally love to put it on pause just for a while so we could relax a little bit. But I mean, coming out of pharma, we all want somebody to come up with innovative vaccines these days. So the big pharma companies are all out there collaborating with universities, collaborating with each other, which we haven't seen to that magnitude before. So innovation is, it's there, and it's for sure not going to stop in my mind. At the same time, I think somebody also mentioned it. COVID is going to be a huge economical burden on society. So we will see that governments will now ask for lower prices. They will still ask for innovative medicines. So, the only way I can see, being an economist, can see that equation being solved is we need to come up with very innovative solutions, both within R&D, within our processes, and within the way we actually go and market our products. So I don't see that the innovation can be put on pause or be given another name.
Yeah, because the moment we talk about any pharma organization, and as you rightly said, people start thinking first thing when we will get that vaccine, and whether there is so at this point in time, the moment you will put it on pause, at least in a very positive manner, I would say people can relax in the pharma industry.
Yes.
So now we are on the COVID and the pandemic situation. So how you guys think or evolving a new business model post pandemic and future of the organization? Because definitely we are talking about different operating models and how it's going to evolve. So your thoughts on this? Let's go with Mahesh first.
Yeah, I think one thing good that COVID has done is, it has probably accelerated innovation. If you look at even simple thing like work from home, it was, although most of us knew that it is possible, but it was not adopted to this large scale even a few months back. So it has kind of pushed us to the wall, and we have adopted newer ways of working. So similarly, if I have to give you one example of what we have done in our own company internally since the COVID lockdowns happened. So we kind of realized that, okay, there will be always two situations. So we'll be having some set of people who are working from home, and some set of people who are required to come to office. So we have to have a consistent and facilitate both the models. So what we call secure work from home or safe return to office. So what we have done is through an app, we have given some leeways or some features to employees, where if you're working from home, your attendance is automatically recorded from the app, so start and end time. So one is indicating that yes, you are working today. And second one is like what we were discussing the other day with KNR. So he said, okay, you don't know when work starts and when it ends when you're working from home, right? So we have a solution for that. So if you are indicating that you're starting work and ending work every day, then people can be conscious of who they contact and at what times, especially when we have people all around the world and working across time zones. So that's a simple thing that we have done. Also, for people who are now working from office, so we have created simple technology-based solutions like proximity alerts. So when we have many people coming together in one place, so it is the phones will start beeping. Similarly, some movement tracing will be there. So all this will help in maintaining safe social distance. So this is one example of how we have done internally. But also, if you look at what we are doing with customers, one example that I can think of is a CPG retail company who sell unique furniture and home decor items. So they had this process of they have the manufacturers all over the world. So the process typically was they create a product design and then they go out to that manufacturing facility to check the prototype. So now we are discussing with them, and we are creating the entire experience available in augmented reality in 3D. So you can try out the product from where you are. You don't have to necessarily travel. But same example, if we had given few months back, they would have said, no, we prefer to travel. But now they don't have a choice. They cannot travel. So they are adopting such solutions.
I agree completely. Things have changed very fast and nobody was thinking about and the way we have adopted. Shubhajit, you want to go next?
Sure. Look, I mean, it is good. I think it's a bit too early to predict all the outcomes of post-pandemic, right? But one can very well anticipate that whatever it is, it's going to accelerate the urgency with which we respond to the sustainability challenges. Let me respond in two broad themes, Bhaskar, if you allow me to do that. So first, anytime I think about this premise, I like to refer back to Shell Sky scenario. It is available in public domain, and maybe some of you are aware of it. Maybe if not, I can highly encourage you to glimpse through it. Now, what the Shell Sky scenario says is not only that there'll be a need for new business models, but it would require an unprecedented scale of collaboration between various dimensions of the society, of consumers, of customers, of energy producers, of energy suppliers, governments. It's suddenly become such a holistic approach that you can imagine that it's difficult to start anticipating all the elements of new world out there. We have also recently published what we call as Rethinking 2020s. And you would also find that in public domain. I find it intriguing to read through it. But what that tells us is, as we emerge out of this and as we head towards the 2020s, there may be scenarios of different pathways that the society chooses to take by prioritizing a few things. Let's say some segments prioritize wealth, others prioritize security, some prioritize health, right? And depending on what you prioritize, the outcomes are going to be very different. So if we were to just stick to the health priority, which focuses on overall well-being, that is also very aligned to the Sky scenario. So this is one piece that at a very strategic level, I wanted to leave with you. The last piece are obviously a few examples, and then somehow the mind this evening is precipitating towards giving you examples around digital technologies. This post-pandemic stuff, or through the crisis that we are going through, we operate a lot of assets across the world, right? Remote inspection, which has eliminated the need for travel. Remote inspection with the help of robots. Experts providing advice to very few technicians on the ground through augmented reality fitted on their helmets. These are examples which probably have been accelerated in terms of their adoption. Someone mentioned that one, I think Mahesh or Kenar. So there clearly has been accelerated adoption of some of these technologies. Yeah.
Sure. Lene, your thoughts?
Well, I think that if we look at what came out of SaaS originally, I mean, it was E-Trade coming out, and Alibaba for sure grew out of the midst of SaaS. And I think I totally agree with Subhajit that it's difficult to say what's going to come out of COVID. But I'll anyway give it a little bit of a try, because I think, first of all, from a farmer perspective, we will see governments will be so pressurized on their budgets, so they will go and try to get prices further down. So they'll keep, and probably also be better at, pushing, negotiating, whatever. On the sort of on the the product to the customer side, I think we'll also see a huge change. In the pharma industry, it will be very much how we used to go with our sales reps to the hospitals and talk to healthcare professionals. That's for sure. Now it's already now changing due to COVID. That is going to be different, how we detail. But also as consumers, I mean, we would prefer not to have to go to the supermarket, to the pharmacy, or even to the department store. So we'll see different delivery models and different e-trade as well, in my mind. And that calls for different platforms and also both of collaboration, but also different kinds of innovative solutions, in my mind. So we are working on different kinds of apps for our sales force, where they are now talking to doctors, discussing with them on various issues over an app. So I think that's just a start. I think we'll see much more of that. And as a consumer, I actually welcome that I don't have to go to the supermarket. Still, I believe that the apps and the platforms should be much smarter, but that's going to happen very, very fast, I believe.
Sure. Kenar, your
So,
thoughts?
obvious business model changes are, of course, about work from home and how do we manage the workforce remotely and things like that. At a macro level in Unisys, I can talk of two areas where business models will change, and we are looking at obviously using technology to make those more efficient and effective. One is in the space of digital workspace solutions, right? This is a time where digital workspace solutions will not be good enough to satisfy the basic needs. The user experience has to be very, very rich, right? So there is a great opportunity there to change the business model in terms of how we engage with end clients, how we engage with the end clients of our clients, and those kind of stuff, right? So that is one space where I think across the industry, the business models are going to change. The second one is in the space of sales executives engaging with the clients. I mean, those days are gone where sales executives can visit clients and have those discussions across the table and things like that. Then how do you ensure that the experience of the client in knowing about our products and engaging with us and making those orders in place and all that becomes effective? So that again, using robotics or using AI, there are the way the clients engage with us to for newer solutions and newer offerings is going to be very different. So these are two areas where I think the industry itself will look at changed business models, in addition to, of course, the various other things we talked about.
Sure. So I think we have now 2 minutes left, and I promise you guys that I will come with one at least rapid fire question. And the only rule of the game is we will not talk about the business and not from the organized. This is completely your personal thing. So we'll start with Shubhajit first. What is the one thing that you would like to innovate in current situation? And you don't need to talk about office, digital transformation and all that.
Well, it may sound like I'm still talking business because I have to go back to technologists. I'm a die-hard technologist. If there's one thing I would really start focusing on is hydrogen as an alternate energy carrier.
Okay. Lene?
So, I mean, I've already talked about me as a consumer. I want to e-detail still to be much better. But I would also like, my mailbox is killing me every day. I would like that one to be much smarter, so I didn't have to sit there every day and get the pain in the neck and whatever. So as much smarter mailbox and way to communicate and collaborate is for sure something I would love to see.
Kenner, can you help Lene in that?
Of course. Hey, I don't touch my email, right? Okay. So
And you can put a simple
that's one solution.
email rule. Simple email rule.
Yeah.
Certain size or certain people, yeah, just goes to trash.
But I wanted to get rid of it totally. I want something different. So
Just move everything automatically to trash. You're fine.
Kenner, same question for you. I will not leave without answering you this
A
question.
better chair. I want a chair which makes me feel like I'm sitting on air.
yeah, exactly.
Mahesh?
Yeah, I'd like to innovate something for the kids. Kids should be out there and playing with real friends and not just looking at gadgets. So something in that area.
Sure. Thank you. I think we are dot on time, and we have answered most of the questions which has been raised by attendees. So I would like to thank all of you for joining this session. Very engaging for me, interesting for all of you. And we will come back soon with another topic within the innovation piece. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Bhaskar.
much.
Thank
Nice meeting you.
you. A pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.